I arrived just after noon. The sun was sharp, but the kind of heat that sits on your shoulders without burning. I stood across the street staring at the house. My name wasn't on the mailbox anymore. The shutters had been replaced, and the little garden I remembered was now concrete and stone. Still, the curve of the roof, the brick trim near the windows, I knew it. This was the house. My house. I crossed slowly, pulling my small, rolling bag behind me. My knees ached from the flight, but I told myself it was just age and dry air. I carried a wrapped package in one hand, a book about sea turtles, something I thought my grandson might like. I didn't know his favorite color or his favorite food, but I knew he was 7. When I reached the gate, a small red light blinked on the security camera. A voice came through a speaker I couldn't see. "We don't give out food here. Try the community pantry off Alameda." I stood straighter. "I'm here to see Mateo," I said. "I'm his mother." There was silence. Then footsteps. The front door opened, and there he was. He looked older than I remembered, but not unrecognizable. Taller, his shoulders broader. He was wearing a polo shirt and holding a car key. "Mateo," I said, smiling. "It's me, Alma." He stared at me like I was speaking another language. I took a step forward, reaching into my coat. "I brought a book for security," he called over his shoulder. "Get this woman off my property." My hand froze midair. "I'm your mother." I whispered, my voice thinner than I'd planned. He turned back. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Then he muttered, flat and cold, "My mother died when I was 10. The gate buzzed. I didn't move. He didn't look back as he went inside and the door slammed shut behind him. I stood there holding the book until the red light on the camera turned off. The motel was 3 blocks away. I walked there without speaking to anyone, my suitcase wheels rattling unevenly across cracked pavement. The sign flickered, even though the sun was still out. A woman behind the glass checked me in her eyes, dropping to my shoes, then to the frayed handle of my bag. She didn't smile. "Single or double?" she asked. "Single. Just me. Cash." I nodded. She handed me a key card without another word. The room smelled like bleach and smoke layered over something older, something tired. I set my bag down beside the bed and sat without taking off my coat. The silence pressed in around me. No humming fridge, no voices in the next room. Just the dull hum of a world that had moved on without me. From the side pocket of my bag, I pulled out the letter. It was wrinkled, printed months ago, maybe longer. Rosa had never been one for detail. The email said, "Mama's fine. Mateo's doing great. Maybe wait a while before visiting." I had waited 22 years for papers, for stability, for the right time, and every time I got close, something pushed it further. Work permits, bad timing, another surgery for someone else. Rosa never said not to come, but she never said come either. I unfolded the letter again. There was no return address, no phone number. Just her name. The light outside dimmed. I opened the blinds and watched a city bus hiss to a stop across the street. On the side of it, an ad showed a smiling lawyer holding a briefcase. The slogan read, "Protect what's yours. Before it's too late." I watched it pull away until the tail lights blurred. Then I reached into my coat pocket and took out my phone. The battery was at 12%. The screen was cracked in the corner. I opened the browser and typed the address to the county recorder's office. The house might not have my name on it anymore, but I had receipts. I plugged the phone into the wall and sat down to wait for it to charge. The next evening, I walked the long way around Mateo's neighborhood, past the manicured sidewalks and tall hedges. I kept my head down. Behind his house, the alley was narrow and cracked, lined with sagging fences and the smell of fertilizer. A man with a trash bag stepped out of his yard as I passed. He gave me a long look. "You family?" he asked, wiping his hands on his shirt. Thought she was dead. I didn't answer. I waited until the sun dipped below the roof lines, until porch lights flickered on and dinner sounds faded behind glass. Then I crouched beside the chain-link fence behind Mateo's property. I recognized the yard, though everything about it looked colder now. No toys, no garden, just gray pavers and a dark rectangular shed tucked in the corner near the back wall. A faint light flickered inside. The shed was bolted shut. No windows, just a single vent cut into the side. I pressed my face close. The air that drifted out was sour and damp. I hesitated, then whispered, "Hello?" There was silence, then a rustling sound, and a voice. "Are you the soup lady again?" My breath caught. The voice was thin like paper left in the rain. "I was good this week. I didn't ask for extra bread." I closed my eyes. "Mama," I said. No response. I pressed my palm flat against the metal still warm from the day's sun. "It's me," I whispered. "It's Alma. I came home." A pause. Then from the other side of the wall. "They said you died." I sank to the dirt, knees drawn in hand, still resting against the wall that separated us. "I didn't," I said softly. "I didn't die." A porch light flipped on, suddenly flooding the backyard in yellow. I crawled back behind the fence, heart pounding silent. The shed light stayed on, but the voice didn't return. I stayed a while longer, watching the shape of that little building, wondering what was inside besides her. By the time I stood, the night had turned cold. At dawn, I returned to the alley, this time standing by the side gate. I waited until I saw movement, someone unlocking the latch from the inside. A young woman stepped out wearing scrubs beneath a zip-up hoodie. She carried a black trash bag in one hand and glanced up just as I stepped forward. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said. "I just want to know, does the old woman in the shed get water?" She stopped mid-step. Her eyes darted toward the fence, then back at me. "I can't talk to you." I didn't ask for much. "Just the truth. I don't want to lose my job," she said. Voice low. I didn't raise mine. I didn't cry. I just reached into my coat and pulled out the last $100 bill I had folded between my ID and the motel receipt. I pressed it gently into her hand. "She raised me," I said. "If it helps her, just tell me." The girl looked around, then back at me. "My name's Letty," she whispered. "They told me you were dead." "That's what they told the agency, too." I felt something collapse in my chest. "They used your ID," she continued, "to apply for insurance. There's a monthly payout. They say it goes toward care." I swallowed hard. "She doesn't even get warm meals," Letty said. "They give her crackers and old fruit. Sometimes I sneak her coffee, but she's so thin now." Her hands shake. She pulled out her phone, hesitating. Then she opened a video. The screen lit up with an image of my mother sitting on a thin mat, wearing a stained sweater that hung off her shoulders. She was looking up, eyes wide, holding a plastic spoon. "Can I have the soft bread this time?" she asked someone off camera. Then she smiled. A brittle, polite smile. "Thank you for supporting me. God bless you all." Letty lowered the phone. "They film her every month. Post it with donation links. Say it's for charity updates." I didn't speak. I only nodded once. And then I asked Letty if she'd show me where they kept the rest of the videos. The county office was quiet, almost too quiet for what I was about to ask. I took a number and sat under flickering lights with people filing name changes, marriages, business licenses. When they called me up, I handed over Mateo's address and asked to see the property file. The clerk typed, then frowned at the screen. "Transferred. 5 years ago," she said. "Do you have any claim on it? I bought that house." She turned the screen so I could see. A digital copy of the deed showed Mateo's name and under previous owner, blank. No mention of Alma Fierro. She clicked again. "Here's the original scan. That's the transfer signature." I leaned in. The signature was shaky. Too smooth in some parts, too jagged in others. Not mine. "There should have been a notarized release," I said. I never signed one. She shrugged. If there was fraud, you'll need documentation. Originals. I nodded. I have them. The clerk raised an eyebrow, but I was already walking out. Across town, past the freeway and the new condos, there was still one old branch of the bank I used before I left. I hadn't been inside in over 2 decades, but the vault room still smelled like copper and paper. They found my box. It clicked open with a key I'd kept wrapped in tissue hidden in the hem of an old coat. Inside was everything: my original purchase agreement, the receipt for the down payment, a copy of the loan payoff, and the notarized form giving me full power of attorney over my mother. I touched my name on each page as if it could steady my breath. They had taken me off the records. But I had never let go. I walked back out into the street, the documents pressed to my chest like armor. The light had shifted by then, casting long shadows. I didn't feel invisible anymore, and I knew exactly where to go next. I arrived early and sat on the bench across from the elementary school, the sun warm on my back. The campus bell rang sharp and familiar the way it always did at 3 o'clock. Children burst from the front doors in waves, some running, some dragging their feet, some hugging teachers goodbye. I waited. I knew his name from Rose's letters. I had practiced it in my head 100 times, not to say out loud, just to keep it alive. Then I saw him. Dark hair. A sharp jaw, even as a child. Mateo's walk right down to the slouch in one shoulder. He kicked a rock along the sidewalk as he moved past the gate, a backpack drooping from one arm. His mother trailed behind, distracted by her phone. Then his voice light but careless. "My grandma's weird," he said. "She lives in a shed and talks to birds. Dad says she used to be rich, but now she's just old and crazy." I felt something pinch inside me, sharper than sadness, smaller than rage. I stayed on the bench until they were gone. That night, I let Letty into the motel room. She sat cross-legged on the corner of the bed, her shoes off, scrolling through her phone. "I downloaded all the videos I could," she said. "They post most of them under a donation link. They call it a memory project. We watch together." One showed my mother in a paper crown seated at a folding table with a lopsided cake that had no candles. Mateo sang off camera, feeding her lines. "Say thank you for the birthday cards," he prompted. She smiled. "Thank you for the birthday cards." Another clip had her holding a mug, her hands shaking. "Thanks to your support, I get warm tea every morning." Her voice cracked. Letty turned down the volume. "She doesn't even like tea," I said quietly. The last video played in silence. It was my mother alone in the shed, rocking slightly, humming to no one. I reached for my bag. It was time to remind them what real family looks like. I dressed in the morning without thinking too much about it. Clean pants, a plain blouse, shoes that didn't make noise when I walked. I wasn't trying to look like anyone's idea of a mother. I was trying to look like myself. Letty met me outside the motel. She'd brought a nurse she trusted and a lawyer whose name I had memorized the night before. The lawyer carried a thin briefcase. The nurse carried nothing but her hands ready. We drove to the house together. I didn't look at it as we pulled up. I already knew where every window faced. The lawyer rang the bell. Mateo's wife opened the door. She started to speak, her face tightening the way people do when they plan to refuse something. "You can't just walk in." Then she noticed the camera clipped to the lawyer's jacket. The nurse. The clipboard. The envelope in my hands. Her voice trailed off. "I've come for my mother," I said. That was all. The lawyer stepped forward and handed her the documents. She skimmed the first page, then the second. Her hands began to shake. She called for Mateo, her voice sharp and thin. I heard footsteps, a door opening upstairs, a chair scraping. There was arguing inside the house, muffled but urgent. I stayed where I was. I didn't sit. I didn't pace. I stood and waited, the way I had waited in hospitals and offices and immigration lines for most of my adult life. Time stretched. The nurse checked her watch. The lawyer made a quiet phone call. Then the back door opened. They brought my mother out in a wheelchair that didn't belong to them. She was wrapped in a clean blanket, her hair brushed flat against her head. She blinked at the light, confused, her hands folded carefully in her lap, as if she expected to be scolded. She looked at me. "Alma?" she asked, uncertain. "Yes," I said. "I'm here." The nurse adjusted the blanket. The lawyer nodded once, and as we turned away from the house, I already knew the next step wouldn't be private at all. A week later, Mateo hosted what the flyers called a neighborhood hope brunch, sponsored by his outreach company, backed by local donors, complete with catered tables and a hired string quartet. They even rented a podium with a logo printed across the front, something slick and vague about renewal. Letty and I arrived just before the second speech. My mother stayed home asleep in her chair beside the window, a nurse humming softly in the kitchen. The lawn was packed with smiling faces and plastic flutes of orange juice. City officials, donors, photographers in matching vests. Mateo stood at the mic in a pressed blazer, thanking all who supported his family's journey and speaking about care for the vulnerable. I stood near the back beneath a rented canopy, the lawyer just behind me. Then the music cut out. A soft click, and the projector buzzed to life. The banner behind Mateo folded up. A screen lowered. The crowd quieted, expecting a promo video. Something cheerful. Instead, my voice came through the speakers, calm and clear. "This is my mother," I said. "Her name is Lourdes. She is not a symbol. She is not a fundraiser. She is a woman who raised 2 daughters and paid for a house they never let her die in." The first image appeared, my mother in the shed, thin and silent. Gasps. Then the footage rolled, clip after clip. Her trembling hands, the fake birthday, the forced lines, her eyes darting off camera for approval after each sentence. "She never saw $1, I said in the voiceover. Not from the checks, not from the online donations, not from the policy filed using my name. Guests turned to each other. Some stepped back. Someone dropped their champagne glass. The sheriff's cruiser waited quietly by the curb lights off. Mateo didn't move. He just stared at the screen, jaw-tight, eyes unreadable. Then slowly, he turned toward me. Our eyes met across the lawn. For the first time, he looked like he didn't know what to say. I didn't move. The screen kept rolling, and by the time the badge walked through the crowd, it was too late to start over. The meeting took place in a quiet room at the courthouse, long after the cameras had gone. No reporters, no neighbors, just a table, a stack of documents, and a man who finally understood what he had to lose. Mateo sat stiffly across from the lawyer. His wife was beside him, eyes swollen, mascara faded into the creases of her cheeks. She hadn't said a word since they entered. The lawyer's voice stayed level as he read from the stack. Fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, misuse of charitable funds, knowingly filing false documentation, use of a deceased identity for financial gain. He paused. "Your mother is not deceased." Mateo said nothing. His jaw flexed, once then fell still. To avoid formal prosecution, the lawyer continued. "You will sign over the deed to the original purchaser. All accounts linked to the charity fund will be frozen pending investigation. Any attempt to move assets will be considered obstruction." Mateo's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the pen. His signature was rushed and uneven, a far cry from the one they'd forged. His wife whispered, "What happens to us now?" Her voice cracked mid-sentence. The lawyer didn't answer. He simply turned the page and pointed again. Outside, I waited beside the car, the engine humming low to keep the heater on. My mother dozed in the back seat, Her head tilted a soft blanket tucked beneath her chin. The house no longer felt like home, but I stepped inside once more. They didn't follow me. I moved through it like a stranger. Clean surfaces. Empty gestures. Rooms that smelled of lavender and bleach. In the hallway, a dusty shelf held a collection of meaningless trophies and dried flowers. At the back, hidden behind a stack of unused frames, I saw it. A photo of me at 42. Smiling. Proud. My hair pulled back, my hand resting on Mateo's shoulder. It had been turned backward. I picked it up and wiped the dust from the glass. Then I slipped it into my bag and walked out the front door. The lock clicked softly behind me. Our apartment is small, but it holds. The walls don't creak. The heat works. And in the afternoons, the light falls across the floor just right, long and soft, like it used to in my mother's old kitchen. She sleeps more now, wakes slowly. But when she smiles, it reaches her eyes again. I make oatmeal every morning. I stir it until it thickens just the way she likes. I water the succulents on the windowsill, read the paper aloud, skip the headlines that raise her blood pressure. The nurse comes by 3 times a week and brings crossword puzzles. Sometimes we finish them. Sometimes we don't. Most days feel full enough. I was walking home with groceries when I saw him. He was on a bench near the bus stop, slouched low with a cracked phone in one hand and a small, empty backpack in the other. The kind kids take to school with zippers that always get stuck. Mateo stared at the ground, tapping the phone like it might wake up and tell him something better. I paused at the corner. He didn't look up. His jacket was thin, his shoes scuffed. His mouth moved now and then like he was working through a sentence he couldn't quite finish. I thought maybe he'd recognize me. Not for drama. Not for closure. Just because I was his mother, but his eyes passed right over me. He didn't see me. Not because I'd aged or changed or grown harder, but because he never looked past himself to begin with. I stepped off the curb and crossed. As I walked, I caught my reflection in a storefront window, clear, steady, full in the glass. The window was clean. Inside, someone laughed. A baby, maybe. The sound followed me half a block. I kept walking, the grocery bag warm against my hip, the bread still soft, the oranges heavy and sweet. By the time I reached the building, my mother was awake again, watching the door.